The moment has finally arrived. I'm Tom Dickinson, and despite a hiatus that lasted, almost 3.5 years, yes, this is still Doctor Who The Moment, a podcast about a TV show called Doctor Who, and the people who like that show. On each episode, I ask a guest to share a moment from an episode of Doctor Who that they have a lot to say about, and then I ask them to say it. We are back for a new season of monthly episodes, and let's save all the programming notes and related business for the end, shall we? This week, I'm talking to Nicole Hill of Black TARDIS and the Black Nerds Create Collective about a moment from Ncuti Gatwa's first big outing as the 15th Doctor, 2023's Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. As the episode begins, we meet our new friend Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson, as she's been experiencing a rash of bad luck. We've just seen Ruby appear on a television program investigating the matter of her birth parents, and then on stage, performing Christmas carols in a band with her friends, both times beset by catastrophic equipment failures owing to interference by weird little goblins. Meanwhile, our brand new Doctor, played by Ncuti Gatwa, hot off his first appearance from the end of the 60th anniversary special, The Giggle, is looking into the mysterious pattern of goblin mischief. And he's started to catch on that this girl, Ruby Sunday, might just be at the epicenter. This brings us to December 23rd, 2023, the night before Ruby's 19th birthday, when she and her friends are out at the club celebrating. But in the brief moment when we catch up with her, Ruby is sitting alone at a table, nursing a gin and tonic, apart from the dance floor, her friends nowhere to be seen, and that is when Nick's moment occurs.
Open my mouth to breathe the words to you.
She's in the club and she's drinking and she's like, just kind of, I don't know, wallowing. And so you know it's like a disco, you know it's like a vibe. But she's not connected to that vibe in that moment. But they zoom in, we see the Doctor for the first time, like through her eyes. And he's like dancing in the middle of the floor, wearing like a rib tank and a kilt, and just literally owning the dance floor, like just dancing, having so much fun, having so much joy, just being super free. And that like takes her out of kind of whatever she was feeling in that moment, and then she just locks in on the Doctor. That's how they meet, really. They meet because she's like, who are you? Like, what is this?
Careful!
Thank you. But you were just over there.
Health and safety. Gin and tonic division.
That's like when they clock each other and like recognize each other, and then that I think informs how he engages with the Doctor for the rest of the episode, and then obviously throughout the series.
What is it about this moment that stuck with you so much?
I think initially, the first time I saw it, it was just the complete unbridled joy, right? Like, it was just, when we first meet the Doctor, we are always in a complicated place with the Doctor, right? Like,
Yeah.
Ninth Doctor is my first Doctor.
What are you doing here?
I live here.
Well, what'd you do that for?
Because I do.
So it's very much like a different energy. And when we get to a point with the Ninth Doctor, when they're dancing, right?
Does the universe implode or something if you dance?
Well, I've got the moves, but I wouldn't want to boast.
That is a moment that is acknowledged in the story because it's so important to like show that the Doctor can experience joy and be light and have levity.
True, that the whole episode is called The Doctor Dances, just to kind
You
of
got the moves?
prove it.
Show me your moves.
Right, that's the thing.
Rose, I'm trying to resonate concrete.
So we are like, the Doctor can do that. I can embody that, but it like, you know, you have to get to that place. Even with like, I think of Matt Smith dancing
I only came for the dancing.
at the wedding, but that's still a place of like, we've already gotten to grow with that Doctor and connect to that Doctor. But we get this right off the bat. There are people who have never watched the show who have no connection to a Doctor yet. And that's their first impression really of the Doctor. It's just like, this is a free person. This person like is just loving life, having fun. And I love that as like just seeing that. But also as like a Black queer person, I love that the Doctor is able to be representative of that. I have always considered the Doctor queer because the Doctor, by nature of being able to change their bodies and be able to change the circumstances of how they move through the universe, They are queer kind of by default. Even if they have on television, at least, always presented as a white male, to our gaze, you know what I mean? They've always had the capability of existing in different bodies.
Can you change colour or are you always white?
No, I can be anything.
And is there a limit? I mean, how many times can you change?
507.
What is your gender when you can be any gender? Having a doctor that feels queer, just being a free Black guy dancing in the club, it just felt very like affirming for me. And it's just a fun, beautiful moment, right?
Yeah.
Ruby really connects to the doctor through that moment in the same way that I think the audience does. And thinking about it, I'm like, this contextualizes so much of her behavior throughout the series that I did not recognize until today, like rewatching it, because I'm like, this is why she trusts him in the way that she trusts him. And this is why she like, because we always like, girl, why are you like this? Like,
What did you do that for? Who sees a ladder and just pops on? A ladder in the sky, and you thought, yeah, I'll give that a go, babe. They've got the baby!
you just is too casual about some of these decisions. I can kind of understand now why she was like, this person is just free and just having fun. And this is like it's like you want to embody that thing that you just saw, right? Like, I see this and I want to emulate that. So now I'm like, oh, this explains to me why she's so with everything. Because she's like, I want to be able to move through the world this way. And like me watching it, I'm like, damn, I want to move through the world this way, where I can just go to the, be at the club, be in the center of attention and not feel any kind of way about it and just like living my life and enjoying myself. And even though obviously every situation does not allow for dancing in the middle of the club, but every situation allows for you to make a choice that just feels like the most authentic choice in that moment. Make a choice that feels like freedom or feels like an authentic choice to yourself. And that's what I realized watching it the most recent time for this. It's like, oh, this informs so much of Ruby's connection to the doctor and like how she moved in regard to like some of the choices she makes. Because I'm like, this is just wild. But if you operate from the place for like, we just doing whatever, it makes sense actually.
Yeah. It's such an interesting connection that they have. In 73 yards, is that what 73 yards? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
The doctor disappears and she has this whole alternate life without him. She mentions at some point, like, I didn't really know him that long. I didn't really know him that well.
No, I was hardly with him, really.
Right.
But it felt like a lifetime.
But
Yeah.
you can still have like
with
a
the
connection with that kind of person based on like an instantaneous locking eyes across a crowded room.
Right.
And I can't quite decide whether this feels like a romantic or sexual moment to me, or whether it's just purely platonic. What do you think about that?
I think it can be read romantically, and I wouldn't like begrudge anybody that reading. To me, it definitely more feels like seeing somebody who you want to emulate. So that can go both ways. Especially if you're a queer person, the line between do I want to be you or do I want to be with you is that line is very narrow. So I think it can be read romantically. I personally don't read it romantically just because I just feel like Ruby sees something in the doctor that's just, I want to be that. Like, kind of like we see it kind of like Clara eventually is very much like, oh, I want to be.
I'm the doctor.
Don't you dare.
Dr. Oswald.
I'm going to do what you're doing.
You can call me Clara.
And like, I see it in a similar way of like seeing what you want to embody. So I think for her, for that connection that they have immediately is much more of that, like, I want to be able to be this free in my everyday life. And I'm so pulled in by them because they are a reflection of what I wish I could be. So it definitely can be read romantically. That's not one of those hills I would die on because I'm like, you can definitely read it that way.
Yeah, I think hundreds of years of like heteronormativity in media has kind of like conditioned me to like, oh, there's a young woman on screen and there's a young man on screen and they're looking meaningfully at one another for the first time they see each other. For me, I think that like preconditioned me to say like, oh, is this going in a romantic direction? And I think the way the season played out, it didn't at all, which is, I think part of that has to do with like the loud and outgoing queerness of the doctor, especially in this scene, kind of releases them from that history of like expectations of like what you might think when you're looking at two people on screen together.
Right. And I think they continuously kind of subvert it and play with that with every kind of person they interact with. It's like, romance isn't the point. Like, we can flirt all day because people do that. People flirt all the time. It's not important to their lives. It's just a part of their personalities, right?
Your name is Cherry.
It is.
Cherry Sunday.
Like a tasty treat.
Yes. I'll see you later, Cherry, okay?
We don't think of it as like, oh, this is seeding something important. Like, it's going to be a big romance. We just like, there you go. You know what I mean? And I think that's a fun way to play it because, again, the doctor can look like whatever, anything. So, like, their attraction would be probably very diverse in general. And I love, again, like when you see that moment when they're on the dance floor, it feels like a moment a lot of us can like inject ourselves into and like project ourselves onto. And that's what I like about it. Like, it doesn't feel like a thing that's big because it's a black guy or because of, like, it feels just like free in a way that like anybody can find themselves in that moment. Anybody can project onto the doctor, and the only people who can't
Why not?
specifically cannot see themselves
Because you, sir, are not one of us.
like they're probably like a black man.
So you were kind.
Which is their own issue, right? But I think if you take away those trappings, they are easy to just find yourself in because like they do whatever they feel like.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because in this episode, you know, Ruby, who's a white woman, like
I'm a doctor.
there's like an identification between them. I mean, there's a lot that could be said about the treatment of issues around like adoption.
Yeah,
in this
I only found out recently.
this season
That's
and
a coincidence.
in the way RTD has handled things. But I think it's interesting that like there's a kind of like, oh, you're like me. Like we have some things in common where she's like able to see herself in the doctor despite how different they are. And I think that's more true of them than they seem more like they have stuff in common than almost any other doctor companion pairing I can think of.
That again goes back to that moment of like you look across the room and you see a person who is like the reflection of either you or what you want to be, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we know why within the episode like he would be focused in on her, right? Like we know why he might be like, she seems to be the core of this issue that I keep running into.
Can
right?
I ask, does that happen to you a lot? Knocking things over?
Oh, all the time, but I'm just clumsy.
No, you're not.
But for her,
It's worse than that.
she doesn't have that context. That's just a connection she feels
Merry Christmas.
based on like what she's seeing when she does like catch up on the dance floor. And like even if they had never talked again, right? Had never met, that moment for her would have still been important to her. That would have been one of those things she thinks back on. Like I just like she's making a choice one day and just thinks about that. Like she sees that moment in her head the way I see it in my head and just like, nah, I'm gonna do the thing. This is what I want to feel like when I make this choice. So I just really love how intense that like moment is for her because it literally changes her whole demeanor. Her face changes her, but she stands up to look. She's like transfixed. And I'm like, regardless of what happens in this season, like this could be the last episode with her, and then she could have been a one-off.
Yeah.
And I still think you could like make the argument that that would change her life just because she was so immediately affected by it.
Yeah, it's funny. We don't really know what she was like in her feelings about. I don't know if it was like just general birthday sadness or like.
Well, I think she's tired. Like, hey, it's my birthday.
Yeah.
Every birthday, something crazy happening. Like, I just want to have a normal birthday. And then, you know, the whole thing with like still looking for information about the birth parent. Like, I think it's all of that. Like, I think they kind of give you enough information.
Sure.
But she looks so sad that it's like, you really can't know, like, what really happened. Shout out to Millie, but, like, it was literally such a shift in her whole demeanor that I was like, oh, her life has changed.
Yeah. There's a lot we could say about Shooty, and we will, but, like, props to Millie because she does sell this moment. Like, she's a really good physical performer, I feel like.
She's great at emoting. I think I paused. I was just like, damn, girl, like, who hurt you? Like, what happened? And she was so sad, and I had never really realized how down she looked. And then, like, you could just slowly see it. Like, she see it from the corner of her eye, kind of like, oh, what's that? Like, I'm seeing the energy all focused in this one space and trying to see what everybody's like, what is happening? And like leaning into it. And the more she's realizing what's happening and like seeing this moment, the more she's like letting go of whatever is weighing her down. And you can see that happening on her face. And I'm like, that is fantastic. Like great acting. Because I was like, wow, she is changed. This is a changed person from this.
What do you think about Shooty's costume here?
I love it because I'm a person who, like, if I go somewhere, there's like the outfit you wear to be seen outside of that place. And so that's like a full outfit. But then there's the reality of it being very hot in that place. And so you like take off the jacket layer. You take like in my mind, they probably came in there with a whole fit, like a jacket, a cute little moment.
We see him walk out in a leather jacket, a black leather jacket.
Right. So you like, I love it because that's what you do. You layer. I don't know. I just love that, like, I'm hot, I'm going to dance, throw the jacket off, it's on a chair, whatever, right? And so I think it's a very realistic kind of vibe in general. I love the kilt conceptually, because I love it because it looks good, but I also love it because, like, think of how much air is happening right there while he's twirling. You know what I mean? Like, it's very nice. Like, getting, cooled off in the moment. So that's just me. That's very my practical thought. It's like, actually, this is probably the best case outfit actually in this phase. But also it just looks great, right? Like, I like that they are not desexualizing. I don't know how to like explain that. Like, I feel like there's a fine line of like, we want this doctor to be attractive, but we don't want them to be too hot. So I think they always were like, how do we keep Matt Smith in a place where he's not too, like we don't want him to. I feel like that was a place that they were kind of scared to go, or not necessarily scared to go, but like maybe our doctor can't be hot. I don't know how we write a hot doctor. And this time they were like, we're just gonna let the doctor be hot and see what happens. Like, I think that was kind of pivotal.
Yeah.
To this iteration, like it's the part of the character. Because I feel like there was a point also, and Jodie probably had saying that, but like we have a female doctor. Let's not sexualize her, which I understand from a big picture perspective of why you would want to make sure that you don't give people the opportunity to like, of all the things she's going to be criticized for, let's not then add, people only like her because her boobs are showing or whatever. Like something to that level. So they can only go so far with like, okay, we want them to be attractive. We want it to be understandable why people want to travel with them, but we don't want them to be so hot that it's it's a problem. And with this one, they were like, we don't care if they're hot. And we don't actually care if it's a problem. We all have eyes. We can see that this person is attractive. And even if you can't, if you do not have, vision, they have said it multiple times in the show. So you still have a good idea that this is an attractive doctor. You know what I mean? So like,
the first thing
Mel, what do you
Mel
think?
is like,
I think you're beautiful.
the first thing when he shows up on screen. So
Still beautiful.
right. Like, I think that's acknowledged in some way that we are all on the same page. Like, yes, this is an attractive person. So I just like that they let them be attractive. And that also follows through with like clothing. And like, I love that the doctor can wear like things that are, form fitting. Things that are showing skin, but also things that are not like, a kilt obviously culturally is different, I think, in the UK than it would be out in the US, right?
Yeah, so I don't really know the difference between a kilt and a skirt.
Right, like that's what I'm saying. In the US, I don't think we are, like, if you wear a kilt, there's like guys have been on fashion covers and it's like, especially black guys, black like rappers and other artists have been on covers. It's like, they wearing a skirt. It can be a kilt, mind you. These are not distinctions that are made when we are having conversations out here. So like, it's also a bold choice in the fact of like, he's also wearing a skirt, right? Like, I understand that kilts have a different place culturally in parts of the UK, but in America, you are wearing a skirt, sir. And like, that in and of itself is a choice. And I love that they let him do that.
I read an interview with the costume designer. I forget her name. She said that like on her mood board for Shooty, like one of the first things she put up there was a skirt. And she was like, eventually we got to get him into a skirt. But then they like did it right away. It was like one of the first things they did.
And that was an iconic choice. Shout out to her for that, because even from a technical perspective, like the way it's framed, it just works because the skirt is all this like circular motion. It just looks really good. So I'm glad they did the kill. I think it makes sense for the character.
This reminded me, I'm not sure whether it's the same or not. Like, it reminded me of Harry Styles on the cover of Vogue in a dress.
I remember that moment, and this goes back to that. Other people had done that before.
Yeah.
Male black artists had done that. I'm like, I want to say A$AP Rocky predated that.
Okay.
I'm bad with time. I'm horrible with timing, so don't nobody come for me. So it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, this is not new, but of course, because it's like a very popular white guy doing it, it's going to be a conversation. And it's one of those things where I love it because it does open up a conversation, but I also get irritated by it because it's not a new conversation. It's that y'all just didn't care when it was a person of color or when it was XYZ.
Yeah.
Like, he has the freedom to do it because he's Harry Styles, right? Like,
yeah, that's the thing.
It's not like you're
operating from a different position when you're, Ncuti Gatwa in the first episode of Doctor Who versus when you're the most famous man in pop music or whatever.
The privilege level is different. And so you have way less, even if you get a lot of blowback, that amount of blowback, how that affects your career is a lot different than like if it's a person of color, if it's a person that's not as famous, if it's like, so cool. And I love it for him. And I love it for the people who saw that as affirmation of like as a man, I can wear something that's coded as feminine and it can still be cool and hot and like not mean nothing about me sexually or whatever. Like, that's a whole other thing people need to unpack. Like, why are you scared to be seen as something that, that's not straight? But again, baby steps.
Yeah.
But I think there is a difference between it being like Harry Styles, who is like, has a lot of protection, just being a very well-liked white man with means, and then being like a newer actor in a series that people do not like change. They like change in the sense of we like having a new white person to take this role, but like they don't like change. And we want it to look drastically different. So yeah, I think it was still risky, and that's why I still applaud it in the context.
And I think it's distinctive to Shudi's doctor because like other doctors have mostly like costumes. Like they have their one thing they wear throughout the season, whereas he has a couple looks he keeps returning to, but we see him in all kinds of different costumes that are not similar to one another. Like there isn't like one silhouette that he's always in.
Right. There's like a real fashion element in terms of like, I want to match the fashion of the time. I want to look good.
If we're in the 60s...
For the time that we're in.
What about my clothes?
Good thinking.
Whatever that time is, I want to look like a person who was fashionable in that time and in that moment. I love that.
Like a sound you hear that lingers in...
There is something very cool about also I'm going to show up in whatever I'm wearing, even if it don't make no sense for where we are.
Aren't you going to change?
I've changed my jumper. Come on.
That's a cool thing, but it also gets old because it just means you don't change up, right? It's just fun. It's just like to watch. I like to like not know what the doctor is going to be wearing at any given time.
Yeah. To kind of change tracks a little bit, can you tell me about how you first became a Doctor Who fan and what your history is with Doctor Who?
Yeah. So Tumblr, Tumblr.com. So it's very funny. Tumblr, as you may or may not know, is like microblogging. But a lot of people use it to like make fan art or to share fan art. A lot of people like GIF sets were like the thing. It's like instead of like where you would post a whole clip of like a show, they would just make a GIF set.
Yeah, I remember that.
I kept seeing so many GIF sets of this show. And I say this show because multiple things occurred here. I didn't know the premise. So I was seeing GIF sets of a lot of Matt Smith. I did not know that was the same thing.
Right.
But wildly enough, I saw so many...
Martha Jones, you saved the world.
Yes, I did.
Tennant and Martha.
Spent a lot of time with you thinking I was second best. But
So many Martha. Like Martha was well loved.
I am good.
If GIF sets were to be believed. I believe that she was a main character because of how much she was represented on my timeline. So I turned on Doctor Who, and first and foremost, I was like, who is this man?
I'm the doctor, by the way. Doctor, you look more like a navvy. What's wrong with this jumper?
None of those like GIFs or GIF sets had Eccleston's doctor, so I was like, I don't know who this man is. It was like a whole thing, and I watched it like the whole. At the time, I think it was right before season 6.
Okay.
And yeah, I watched it like 5 days.
Ooh, wow.
I'm a binger. I can sit there like once I'm locked in, I'm locked in. And so I went through that whole thing really quickly. But it was just funny because when you are like visually, people liked Martha, but then when I became a fan and started like, oh Martha, I love her, and then I read what people said about Martha, it was very jarring.
Yeah.
I was like, this is weird because there was a lot of GIFs of Martha. That's how what drew me to the show initially, kind of. And then to actually read what people said about Martha was so jarring and shocking to me that I was like, okay, well, clearly y'all are very weird.
Yeah, people said some really extreme things about Martha. I don't know if that's still the case, if people are still full of hate for her.
I think people are better about it, but I think people still hold on to it just because they just don't see value in people that are not, that fit certain standards. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, okay. Are you on Tumblr anymore?
I have a Tumblr and I will go to Tumblr, but I mostly do it because it's just where people post good like fan art and stuff, and I don't have to look all over the internet for stuff.
Are people like responding to the Ncuti Gatwa era? I don't even know because I'm not there anymore. Has that had like Tumblr uptake?
I don't know. I go to my little tag and I do not see what the masses are doing. So like people who like Ncuti are like, I think all the GIFs I was sharing the day or whatever of the episode, because somebody had it on Tumblr like in half a minute before like it just showed on the TV and it was already on Tumblr. I'm like, okay, y'all with it. Of course, I should have known because Tumblr, they know how to make a GIF. I don't know what it is.
Oh yeah.
And so like I think that like the stuff I see, because I curate to not see things I don't want to see, which, you know, whatever people call it a bubble, but at least I'm aware of the fact that I'm in a bubble.
I am not lowering my bubble. Okay.
And I curate specifically. People like it, right? And like the people I am following and curated to see are very like appreciative of it. But I think are also really, again, going back to like Tumblr loves an aesthetic. A lot of people really like the fashion. And you see like a lot of the GIFs of just the different looks and different moments and all the faces and stuff. Because, you know, like Ncuti will make a face and like they love that. So, but I think people just like, I think Tumblr just like Ncuti anyway, because there was a lot of GIFs from that one show. I forgot to call it right now.
Sex Education, was that it?
Yeah, there we go. Just a bunch. Like it was like,
wash your hands, you dirty pig.
Like you can find almost any response you need in a GIF if you just search his name, which I love. It's like a shortcut.
What do you think of the music in this scene? The music in the club.
Like that was a really good song choice. Like it feels so good. That wasn't an artist I'm aware of.
It's called Touch. The song's called Touch, and the artist is Hybrid Minds.
One touch to open.
Not something I had heard of either.
One touch to close.
I think they're like maybe DJs, but it's the vocalist. I think it's Tiffany Juno. You're right with the artist name, but I was like, I think the actual vocals are Miss Ma'am, and I was like, I had to look it up because I was like, she's given what needs to be gay. I just love the way the song crescendos. It's just like it went perfectly with that. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, did they find a song? Like, we gonna build this moment around this song? Or is it they filmed this moment and then it was like, this song, the drop is perfect. I can't tell because it just goes so well.
Yeah.
One touch to open.
So I think they made a really good choice with the song. Like, it just feels, so it kind of goes with the moment of like Ruby being like, and then it's like, as she's zooming into the doctor, the song is building up. So I think it works really great.
It feels very like different from the way the show usually sounds.
Yeah.
It's very contemporary, whereas Murray Gold is very like orchestral and kind of like old fashioned.
It's like way more modern than I think that we're used to for it. Right? Like something that they found the day after it like was dropped.
Yeah.
A lot of times they still have pop songs that are very popular, but they're popular maybe a year or two ago or even older, like just pop songs from back in the day that we all kind of recognize.
And it says that you're wired for sound.
Or Kylie Minogue.
Right? Like, I like that it was a song that felt like it
I love this.
would have
Classic.
been timely. Something they would have been listening to in the clubs in that moment. They just went with something that was modern in that day.
This whole season did like a lot of
I heard music.
weird stuff with music, like
And music.
It was very interesting musically.
obviously there's like the Goblin song in this episode.
Maybe we can feast. We can dine 3 days at least.
Which was actually a jam. Which is like...
Okay, you're another person who likes that. A lot of people hate it. I love the Goblin song.
Because you know why? I don't like musicals.
Oh, yeah?
I think why I like it is because it doesn't feel like a musical song. It feels like a poppy song, like a pop song that they like tried to fit into a musical kind of style. So as opposed to like musical song, like I don't know that I can't explain this because I don't love musicals.
Oh yeah.
Like if I watch something in the musical stars, I'm like, oh my god, are you serious? Like so. Obviously, that next episode had me a little. There's always a twist. Discombobulated, like not this. There's always a twist. But I think that's why I like it. I think I like it because I'm not a musical person. I think people who like musicals were like, this is not given. But for me, because I don't like musicals, I'm like, this is fine. This is actually great. It's fun.
Well, I'm a musical liker, but I also like that. Like I like how silly it is.
I know. I think it's very fun. You can't sing it. You can't be outside singing it, decontextualized, but you can like definitely sing it in your house to yourself.
Cause the Goblin King, or the Goblin King, it's so good to meet you, you great big.
How do you enjoy this episode overall?
So this is one of them ones where you almost had it. You were so close to having it, but then you didn't have it. Because when Ruby is...
No. I mean your daughter Ruby.
Temporarily removed from existence.
Who's Ruby?
Yeah.
What happens to Carla and Cherry is so insane to me.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have Ruby in their lives, they completely changes how Carla relates to being a foster parent.
Me, darling.
Taking care of these kids.
Don't be so stupid.
It's so dark and
That's
cruel.
too much like hard work. No way, I just put my name on the list when I need a bit of money.
No, you don't.
It was very much like, oh, I just do it because I need this little check.
800 quid per child.
You don't say that.
It's like you are playing into pervasive negative stereotypes about the types of people who foster kids, especially people of color. It also just, it don't make sense. Like, the next baby, if Ruby didn't get picked up that day, they would have found another baby, they would have fell up with that baby, and we would have still got the same version of Carla and Cherry. I hate that it changed them so much to have Ruby. If you look at that wall of pictures, a lot of those are children of color. So it's also kind of weird to then be like, but if we didn't have this one,
Yeah, wow.
this
yeah.
little angel,
Ugh.
to the point where like not being there makes them horrible, sad, depressed, mean. That's the thing, mean people. Like it changes who they are. So it was like, oh, you almost had it. It was like a really fun episode. I was with the whole little musical part. I love the like language of rope.
I am learning the vocabulary of
I love so much about it. And then you had that like 3 minutes of them like the worst treatment of these characters. So like it's enjoyable when I don't take that into account, but you can't necessarily not take it into account.
Yeah.
Like you stop the episode Oh, right after they save the baby. Perfect. It's very great.
What do you think about Ncuti overall, the 15th Doctor?
So I love the 15th Doctor as a Doctor. I think that's my favorite iteration. And if I met the Doctor, this is the version I would want to meet. And the thing is that I still have very conflicted feelings about the season overall, but I know for a fact that I would dislike the season outright if he wasn't the Doctor. Him and Millie had great chemistry. So if you take those actors out of that, I would not like this. But because they sold it, I'm letting it rock. I think like he elevated so many of the things that would have like truly taken me out of some of these episodes. I would have been like, nope. And I would love to see what he does with like scripts that are not insane.
I'm sorry to say his story ends in absolute terror. Night, night.
That's all I got in my notes. So do you got anything else you wanted to say about the moment?
I think it's one of those great moments that, like, even if you don't watch the show and somebody shows it and, like, plays it, I think you can still understand. Like, it's a moment that works outside of its larger context. And that's what I think I love about it. Like, I think if I just drop that somewhere, like, as a clip, and I'm like, this is the vibe, people gonna know what I mean. Like, they just gonna be able to understand it even if they don't know what Doctor Who is. And I just love that about it. And I, like I think about it all the time. I'm just like, this is just fun and free. So I don't know. I just love it.
Oh yeah, maybe they'll see that and be like, "Oh, what's this show?" And then
right, that's what I hope. I do hope that. Like, I
do
think,
what you did.
I think it did a great job of like introducing new people to the show, and I hope that people stay. Even though, like, again, I would get it if they didn't. But I hope they gave it a chance and like fell in love with the Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, what counts as a success in the streaming era and like how well all these different shows are doing? People are so clueless as to like what's doing well and what's not. But
yeah, it's hard to say.
Like, I really hope this is a hit.
I do too. I hope it has a chance for the Doctor to like. I love growth. I like if you start at a place where I'm not in love with something. I love the opportunity for you to get better and to be the thing I want you to be. But I think having Ncuti as the Doctor is already like doing a lot of that work because he can sell anything. And so I'm like, even if they keep playing with me with these scripts, like he's a person I enjoy despite things.
Yeah, it's the power of a star. That's like he's such a star.
Yeah, like he's just too powerful.
And that has been The Moment. Thank you for your extraordinary patience. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nicole Hill for being my guest. Nick is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective, where they co-host the Who Watch Time and Relative Blackness in Space podcast. They're also the mad genius behind Black TARDIS, a blog and social media presence devoted to cultivating community for Black Doctor Who fans and other Whovians of color. You can find out more about them and where to follow them on social media at nickfury.com. That's niqfury.com. And here we are, finally, resuming regular Doctor Who The Moment service. It has been a long time, but I am glad to be back here with you at last. The current plan is for episodes to release on a monthly basis, so this is your September 2024 episode, and you can tune back in next month for the October 2024 offering. It's sure to be spooktastic. Maybe, I don't know. Because of how long it's been, I've got some episodes coming that have been ripening, let's say, in the podcast barrel for quite some time now. I was just dusting off the half-finished edit of an episode that was recorded during the run of Doctor Who Flux. Remember Flux? Those certainly were some times. I'm excited to finally let you hear those, and also to hear some new stuff that I'm planning on recording as well. If you'll let me be fully honest with you for a moment, I'm not entirely sure what to expect bringing back this podcast after so long it lay dormant. Are you all still out there, audience? It's harder than ever to know for sure now that social media has fragmented to a million tiny pieces. This show no longer has an account on X, and I don't plan for it to get one again anytime soon, but you can still get the Twitter-flavored microblog experience from @TheMomentPod over on Blue Sky or on Mastodon.social. I'm not sure about Threads. I'm eyeing it suspiciously, but I am eyeing it. This show also has something of a short-form video presence over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, once again @TheMomentPod in all three of those places. People seem to like the short-form videos that I did for previous seasons, so I'm going to try putting a little more oomph into those, starting with the one I did for this episode, which I happen to think is pretty cool. I don't know what to expect from any of that social media stuff, but what I will say is that I would hugely appreciate you helping out the show by telling people about it on those platforms I mentioned, or by sharing it on the ones that I'm not on, or by using your mouth to talk to your friends in the land of the real. You can also follow the show on Patreon, even if you don't want to become a paid Patreon subscriber, which you should, but If you don't, following the free tier on Patreon is actually still a pretty great way to keep up with the show. And maybe we can also check out what's going on with the social and community features that Patreon has rolled out over there. Who knows? I'm still a little new to all that. That's a lot of different services I just mentioned where you can find presences for the show. But you can find all of them, as well as show notes for this episode and every episode at themomentpod.com. Websites I still love you best. That's enough from me. Thanks again for listening, especially those of you who have listened all the way to the end of this spiel. I'm Tom Nickinson, and I'll be back in a moment. Night-night.
There's always